How you doing?
Hello.
How you doing? My name is Juan Johnson. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions. We can start with your name and where you're from, a little bit of your background.
Tom Bolden. I'm originally from southern part of the United States, Georgia.
Okay. Is there any particular part of Georgia?
Down near Savannah is where I grew up.
Savannah.
Grew up on a farm.
A farm.
Interesting thing about growing up on a farm, as most farms, there's a lot of work that involves the use of tools of all sorts, farming tools.
Right.
Whether it be blades of different sorts, hoes, pitchforks, sickles, knives of every kind, and you use them for doing all kind of work.
Right.
And there's always work to do on a farm. So since I grew up on a farm, using all of these tools, by the time I was like, that's true of all kids, by the time you're 10, 12 like that, you're a master of using these tools.
So what time, what would you say was your earliest experience using the tools? At what age did you start doing,
By the time
tools?
you're 4, 5, or 6,
Right.
sure.
Could you
Because
just...
we'd be out in the field assisting with gathering, and if we were gathering onions or corn or whatever it was, you always find stuff even for the littlest ones to do.
Okay.
Because you're taught that work ethic.
Okay.
One of the reasons why families would have, couples would have large families on farms, because it's a very labor-intensive kind of an environment, farming.
Okay, so you basically need all the hands you can have.
Yeah.
All right. Could you tell us more about the farm? What was that like? Could you give us more of a picture of the farm?
We had a 100-acre farm, and we grew, I guess you would call garden-type crops, some of those, which would include sweet corn and lettuce, and we do watermelons and cantaloupes and all that. But then we grew other farm products that included cotton, tobacco, and peanuts. And then, of course, we would just grow crops that we use to feed the animals, or as cover crops, which is used to you plow them under and it refertilizes the soil, put phosphorus in it, that kind of thing.
Okay. Did you know how you acquired the farm? Was it always in your family? I mean, in the South, I imagine.
My great grandfather and mother bought it, like in the late 1800s.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like that, they grew up and just raised, did whatever they did on the farm.
Yeah, sure.
Wow. Okay. So, in your early growing up, what types of sports or anything did you? What kind of student were you? I mean, what type of things were you interested in?
Well, growing up on a farm, fishing, hunting, I did that all my life. Fishing, hunting, plus all of the other kinds of things you get involved in a farm. I used to like to walk the fields, plow dirt on the farm, look for Indian artifacts, airheads, that kind of thing. Plus the thing that was great about it, though, you didn't think about it at the time, like watching it on beach sand, walking on plowed fields all the time, because the dirt is shifty, develops your balance, develops calf strength. So I got that benefit out of it, those benefits out of it. Plus, when you grow up on a farm or you live in the country, sticks are like a rite of passage. I mean, almost everybody, you just kind of, as a kid, you pick up a stick. If you go to the woods or anywhere, you got a stick with you. Even if it's to kill a snake or whatever. I know some people might not like it when you're talking about killing snakes, but you always had a stick with you. So that's kind of a rite of passage. And just as kids, you're always beating on things with it, striking on things, which teaches you a lot about the stick, by the way.
The what?
It teaches you a lot about the reactions of a stick.
Okay.
When you hit on things.
Right.
Because you learn real fast, you hit on a stick, it might bounce back and hit you in the head.
Right.
You learn that. One hit, you learn that.
Right.
And that's true of all of those other kind of tools that you learn on a farm. You learn how to use them and be efficient with them and safe, and the more you use them, the more efficient you become. And you're always looking for ways to become more efficient, because on the farm, you're never out of things to do.
Okay.
You might take a break, but when you're doing work, you want to be as efficient as you can, because you got so much work to do.
Right.
So you're always coming up with new ways to make it more efficient.
Right. So did you like school? I mean, what were your subjects that you kind of gravitated
When
toward?
I was in school, I went to an industrial high school. I was good at almost everything. High school, I took regular liberal arts courses and stuff like that. But the school specialized because it was down south. It was an agricultural high school, so we learned all of those agricultural subjects like horticulture, things having to do with growing crops, anything to do with farming had to do with that. Plus, because on a farm and a farm is a business, you got to be a jack of all trades. So all kinds of skills like masonry, welding, electricity, you learn those too.
Right.
So I got a regular high school diploma with a concentration in agriculture and industrial arts.
Okay. Okay. So you knew what you wanted to do right after high school, or what was that like?
I wanted to go to college, but I didn't have the money, and my grandparents weren't couldn't afford, and I had won a couple of scholarships that wasn't enough, and which kind of brings me to the whole thing of the military. I thought, well, later on I thought maybe I could go to the military. But before that, when it comes to the military, I'd always hated the idea of going to the military because my grandfather had a cousin used to come over,
Right.
and he used to talk about his son who was in the Korean War and how terrible it was and the things he went through, and we heard that as kids, and it kind of turned me against the military. I'm like, oh man, I never want to go to the military.
Right.
But what was interesting about it, I ended up going to the military, and this is the story that convinced me. I was about 14, again, growing up on a farm, doing farm work. We were gathering tobacco one day, helping a neighbor. And at the end of the rows, as you gather tobacco, you take a little break. And we're taking a little break, and a couple of guys were horse playing around, and they were slap boxing. So one of them said, "Oh, you better watch it, I'll use karate on you." And I heard it, and I'm like, "What's karate?" He said, "Oh, that's that stuff Marines know." He said, "They know that karate." He says, "One Marine will beat 6 or 7 guys."
Karate.
And I'm thinking, man, I want to know that karate.
Right.
I'd never heard of it before. So that's the first time I heard of it.
Right.
And I kind of forgot about it, and I had always wrestled a lot and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was my senior year, they had these guys come on campus at school. And they had these pretty uniforms on and these pretty hats. I mean, these guys were sharp. I'd never seen any guys like that.
Right.
Now, I knew about the Army and the Air Force and the Navy, but I saw these. I'm like, who are these guys? So somebody said, "Oh, they're Marines." Light bulb. Those are the guys that know that karate.
Right.
They know that karate. Like, man, look at those guys. Man, those guys are sharp. They know that karate too. Man, I want to be one of them. I had forgotten all about. I hated the military, right? So didn't take long. All I had to do was see a few promotional film.
Right. But, yeah.
Have them give me the line, and they had me, man.
Yeah,
and I asked them. I said, "What about? Oh yeah, you can go to college. You can do it."
Right.
So they had me. I told them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went in right after high school.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting, the cousin, I just throw this in.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather's cousin that used to come over and talk to us about his son that had gone to Korea.
Right.
He was the father of what's his name, the football player? The guy that Shannon Sharp.
Yeah, Shannon Sharp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to school with his Shannon Sharp's father.
Okay.
And his 2 brothers. But that was I thought that was very interesting.
Okay. They grew up around the same area then?
Oh, yeah, we grew up close.
Okay.
I went to school with him.
All right.
His younger uncle we were in classes always together.
So you went from a farm in Savannah, Georgia.
Out from Savannah.
Out from Savannah, Georgia, or near Savannah, Georgia, to the military, and where did that put you?
If you lived on the East Coast and I volunteered for the Marine Corps.
Okay.
If you lived on the East Coast and you volunteered for Marine Corps, you went to basic training at Parris Island, which is one of those barrier islands off of South Carolina.
Right.
Yeah, so that's where I went. I went to the receiving station up in South Carolina. I think it was Columbia at first, and then from there went down to Marine Depot, Parris Island, which in itself was very interesting because once I had joined, and I joined under this program where it said, well, if you join now, they made it very attractive. They said, you join now, you can you'll be in the service, but you can do this break where you can take the summer off, so you won't have to go into military at the same time that you would have had to go back to school.
Right,
I'm like, this is great, man. I can have the summer off, and then I'll be in the Marine Corps. And I couldn't wait to get in the Marine Corps.
Right.
So once we got up to the receiving station and then got sent out to go to Parris Island, there was about 5 of us, Marines. And we couldn't wait to get there. We were talking about how great it was going to be Marines. Oh, man, we're going to be the Marines. So we finally got there, and we got to the main gate. And you'll never forget it. The main gate, the bus stop, and these two huge Marines got on. And their mouths on those. He said, anybody here for the Marine Corps Depot? We are. Oh, boy. From that point on,
really,
I'm like, what did I get myself into?
Yeah, I've heard some stories about the military.
Man, these guys are like, what do we do to them?
Okay, and this was what year about? What year did you enter the Marine?
That was 1962.
Okay, all right. So, when did the Vietnam War start? In 60 what?
Well, it had started like earlier in the 60s, plus the French were there before we were there. Okay. So they always fought over there. But I guess we started to get involved mid-60s and really ramped up in the later 60s.
So you were enlisted during that time?
Oh, yeah. I was in during the Marine, Vietnam era. Okay. Close.
Okay.
Right at the jumping off point in Hawaii. Wasn't comfortable.
So you went to Hawaii?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I
wasn't in Hawaii at first. I was at Camp Lejeune.
Okay.
After I got out of boot camp.
So tell me about boot camp, because I know that must have been something coming from a farm, and then going through boot camp, and
Well, I guess one thing I did once I had decided to join the Marine Corps, I decided, okay, I'm going to start my intensive training program. I'm always doing crazy stuff. So I started my intensive training program. I was doing push-ups. I was doing this. Plus, I worked on a farm. I was in good shape. So when I got to boot camp, I told you it was a nightmare, but it didn't take me long to realize. I realized very quickly that, man, these guys are crazy. These Marine Corps, I realized these guys are crazy. There was no doubt in my mind that they weren't crazy. So I decided, I said, man, what did I get myself into here? But I'm like, okay, there's only one way to get out of this. Man, do everything these guys tell you. I mean, no matter, that's what you do. So I wasn't going to ruffle any feathers, man. It didn't matter where you did or not, they were going to be on you. But it was just a nightmare. One thing I found going for me,
what's that?
First thing we did, you start all of that crazy PT, getting up at 5 in the morning, doing 3-mile run before breakfast, all this stuff. Then after that, you're doing all of this PT and running before. So we got out to the PT field. You had to do pull-ups, push-ups, all of that. And we got in line. I got up, and I was always very good at doing pull-ups. I pumped out, I think, about 50, 60 pull-ups.
Pull-ups? 50, 60?
Oh, yeah. So one of the DIs said, he said, Sergeant, I forgot what his name, he says, I think we got a champion here.
A champion?
And I'm like, what are they talking about? So I guess what happened is intramural athletics is very popular in the military. Okay. And they always had the inter-battalion company competitions.
What is that? What is it?
Where you're competing between battalions or companies.
Oh, okay.
Like boxing or like. And they were looking at me. Oh man, we got a representative.
Okay, so you had a prize. They thought they had a prize catch there. All right.
And as a result of that, because if you can get a break in the Marine Corps,
right.
I kind of got a little break because I was really, really good at doing PT. I could pump out 100 push-ups. Oh, yeah. They were happy. Yeah.
So now what they put you? So you had to compete against another battalion and what? Push-ups?
Yeah.
Okay, just a regular.
You would have your battalion representative. Okay. So I competed normally in doing the push-ups and the pull-ups and that kind of stuff. Okay. But they had other things too, boxing. Okay. All right. So Pujo sticks where we do. You're doing bayonet fighting especially, but you're using these sticks to do it.
Okay. So how did you get into this art? I mean, you said you started. Did you start with karate? I mean, how did you start in with the martial
When
arts?
I was in boot camp, they teach you combat judo mixed with karate, quick kill kinds of stuff, all of that kind of stuff. It's mainly, okay, you're in combat, how you take a guy out. I mean, that's it. Then when I left boot camp, I got assigned to an infantry regiment, and that's all you do. I mean, 8 hours a day, whenever you're training infantry.
Right.
How to fight and kill people.
Right. 8
You know,
hours a day, bro?
Huh?
8 hours a day?
Oh, sure. More than that a lot of times. More than that.
So, Maurice, you train killer. You train
Yeah,
killer
I'm
after
saying,
that.
You're going out on bivouacs
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff. I mean, you're doing this stuff all the time. That's what you do.
Right.
And it involves everything. Hand-to-hand combat, knife, all of this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, firearms, you name it. So, and because it's a military base, and at the time I went in, you just had the Korean War, and it wasn't that long since the World War II. You had a lot of veterans who had been in the Orient, and
Right.
they learned Eastern martial arts, so you could learn them. So I had started studying Shorin-Ryu at the base karate club when I was at Lejeune. So that's where I first started studying.
Now, Camp Lejeune is where?
Down
What state?
in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina,
Okay.
Jacksonville.
All right. Okay. So you started there and you started practicing what they basically taught at the military.
Well, I started practicing in a regular Shorin-Ryu club.
Okay.
That was taught by a sergeant that had been over in Okinawa, and he'd been in Okinawa is where he learned it.
And when did the weapons come in? Like when did you start?
Well, Okinawan, Shorin-Ryu is Okinawa, so it has a lot of weapons. I never got to the point where I was doing so many of the weapons, did staff, that kind of thing. When I was there for a year, and what did I get? A yellow belt, I think it was.
Okay.
But I got a good feel for the stuff, and I never was that comfortable with it because it was very precise and rigid, and it just didn't suit me that well. But I did it. I could learn the stuff, and it was. I spent 2 years at Lejeune. Well, assigned to Lejeune. I was in the Mediterranean, Europe, and down in Cuba during the Cuban crisis.
Oh, really? Wow.
And all of that. But after that, I went to Hawaii, and that's where I had got introduced to Kempo and Eskrima.
Now, had you ever heard that before?
I had never heard of Kempo. I'd never heard of Eskrima.
Just karate.
I had only heard of karate. Only heard of karate.
Not kung fu.
No, none of the kung fu, only karate. So anyway, we got to Hawaii. About a couple of weeks after I got there, they guys came up to do a demo, and a friend of mine that I had just met asked me if I wanted to go to a demo. So I went down and I saw these guys doing this stuff they call Kempo. It was ended up being my teacher, Florentino Ponce, and another one of the senior students. They came up from the main club down from the base in IAEA, which was taught by Professor Timonot, run by him. But that's how I got into it. And right away, I noticed how different it was than Shorin-Ryu.
Okay.
Very fluid, a lot of innovation. So I liked it right away. And when I started learning that, it was a little while later that Ponce had told me to remain after class one day, and he started having me do sticks. He had rolled up pieces of newspaper, had me use those, the knives, and he was telling me how it was the same as what we had learned empty hand, and he would try to relate the two to each other.
Okay.
And but at the time, I really it never dawned on me that it was Filipino. He mentioned it. He said, oh, you're my senior student. I have to teach you more. You have to know more. So I teach you this. You do Filipino art. And I'm like, okay, Filipino art. So what? Filipino art.
Right.
I mean. And I could see that it was similar, so I never really thought about it.
So you could see the similarities between.
I know I thought it was just some kind of Kempo, really.
Okay.
Because it was very similar, but he was saying, "Oh, it's the same. You know it already. It's the same." Mm-hmm. It was 10 years later before I realized I had really learned the Eskrima.
10 years later.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know.
How could you not know?
Well, he never used the term Eskrima. He said Filipino.
Okay.
And he used that stuff that they always use. Oh, he said, this, nobody will be able to beat you. No one will be able to touch you or hold you. And I'm like, okay, right. And I'm like, okay, right. So that's kind of the way I took it, right?
Right.
So even after I came back from Hawaii and I got out, right?
So how long did you study there? I mean, you know.
I was in Hawaii for over 2 years, like 3 months.
Now, could you tell me a little bit more about that experience in terms of what was it like being in Hawaii at that time, and what was it like going to classes and maybe some other practitioners, and what types of things you saw?
Well, Hawaii was just like paradise. I loved it because of the weather and all that. I didn't have to worry about winters and all that. So it was just a beautiful place to be. I really enjoyed it. As far as
what did you do? Like, did you have a job in Hawaii, or did you just, were you still in the military doing what?
Well, I was in the military. That military is my job.
Okay.
I was in MPs.
Okay, you was an MP. Okay, all right. So you went to class. You saw these guys studying Kempo. You started studying with your teacher. Like, what about your other classmates? We had
several guys that. This was up at the base. He started a branch school at the base, not the main school.
Okay.
And we had picked up, there were several guys from the base that were training. Plus, there were some of the locals that came up to train with Ponce too.
Okay.
3 or 4 women were in the class. So it was a good mix.
Okay.
Yeah. But when he had started teaching me, well, let me get back to this thing. I didn't know what this Eskrima was.
Right.
So when I got out of Marine Corps, I went to college. And I was interested in teaching, of course, Kempo in college, which I ended up doing. But I really wanted to continue my study in this stuff I'd learned in Hawaii. So I started looking around for Kempo and Eskrima. People look at me like I'm crazy. I never heard of this stuff.
And where's this at? New York? This
is down south.
Okay.
Plus, I did research to around. I couldn't find anything. I only found one reference to Eskrima at the time. Remember, this is 1966-7. There was a book called Arnis Lanata by Grandmaster Matt Marinas.
Okay.
And there was a gentleman named Grandmaster Porfirio Lanata that taught a 5-strike system. He used to go up in that New Hampshire area up in there and teach. So that was the only thing I could find about Eskrima. And I didn't find anything more really until around 1970 when Daniel Dos Santos came out with his book, The Filipino Martial Arts. And not only that, before that, I started to see some articles in Black Belt magazine about this stuff called Eskrima and how this Filipino stuff. And what caught my attention was this word, Eskrima. I'm like, man, that word seems familiar. And I'm like, where did I see that? And then I remembered on my certificate, on my rank certificate, instructors, there was this Eskrima thing on.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh, that's where I seen it.
Okay.
And I go and I grab the certificate and it's got. And then it hit me, light bulb. I'm like, well, I can't believe this. These people are raving about this stuff here.
Right.
I had already learned it.
Wow.
Then I started to really now go back and try to remember all of the pieces and
wow.
to everything else, right?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it was like, that's kind of how.
So he was like gifted and didn't even know.
I didn't even know. And I didn't know at that time the rich line that I had studied, like having studied the Emperado line under Professor Tiwanak and coming through Professor Matosi. Just amazing. I never could have dreamed that.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know. I was just a green kid.
Right.
You know, I didn't
know.
Yeah.
Really? So you know, seeing you know the art being practiced in I guess Hawaii, was it? You saw?
Yeah.
Okay. What were some of the things that you saw that, you know, inspired you to really want to get into this art and staying with this art?
Well, I just liked that it was a lot more natural than I studied the Shorin Ryu. That was my background. So I just liked the fact that it was very natural. It allowed for innovation, so that appealed to me as the main thing. Okay. The other thing I was going to tell you now, once I'd gotten into the Eskrima and realized what it really was, and I'm thinking the blades and all, I started to think right away. I'm like, well, wow, you know, this stuff here there's nothing different in terms of the principles and techniques for using these different, well, you call them weapons or tools. I mean, this is the same stuff, I mean, I did on the farm. Any kind of way you can imagine I learned to use a tool. I just never thought about using it on people. It kind of hit me. I mean, I never thought about using this stuff on people.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
So it was quite interesting.
Okay. Okay.
But the insight that you get from having, well, it's just like, as long as we're talking about it, if you look at it this way, you know the way I look at things. Like in Chinese martial arts, there's a generic term called Kung Fu. Kung Fu is very generic. It really just means work or effort. So anytime you're working or exerting effort, you're doing Kung Fu. And there's only, if you think about your physical body, there's only so many things that your body does. Your arms, they move a certain way. They only move so many ways. They're hinged, right?
That's right.
So the same thing is true if you're using weapons, using work. I can't imagine there's any kind of movement that I've done using that work with those tools that I wouldn't use using to cut on someone or strike someone or whatever. It's work.
Right.
Yeah. And the more you practice it, the better you get. People don't look at things that way. It's like batting your eye. You bat your eye how many times a day? You don't even think about it. But you do it. You breathe. Same thing.
Right.
You know, martial arts should be the same way. It's just something you do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you think there's a too much of a focus these days on just the ranking and
I think that's the whole
title?
thing. I've never seen such stuff. I mean, this is all recent stuff too. Every kind of world champion under the sun. Hall of Fame's up the gazoo. Kids in Halls of Fame. Halls of Fame, 300 or 400 people. Who ever heard of such crap? How do you put a kid in a Hall of Fame? Isn't a Hall of Fame supposed to be a lifetime of work if you have risen to that level? How can you have a kid that's 7 years old have a body of work to be in any kind of Hall of Fame? It's just amazing what these people will do. And oh, by the way, just pay us $350, $400, you know, we'll induct you as some ridiculous title. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shame. Mm-hmm. Same thing with rank certificates. Oh, by the way, you can get them on the internet now. You can get anything you want. And oh, by the way, you got these people running around with this phony stuff. Masters of, academic degrees, doctorate of martial arts. I mean, anybody that would do that should be ashamed of themselves. Mm. Come on. You're going to run around talking about some doctorate of martial arts? Give me a break. Why are you going to do that?
Right.
That's why I refrain, and people know that. I refrain, and I have tons of titles. They don't bother me at all. I refrain from using title. I don't care. No. There's only one rank. It's your skill. That's it. You wear your skill as your rank. And, you know, it served me well. It served our American modern Arnis well, because that's what we concentrate on.
Now, American modern Arnis is something that you made up, or like how did that come about?
Well, American modern Arnis, because I wanted to respect my teacher, Ponce. Well, I respect Ponce, but Ramey, Professor Parris, because I just liked what he did with it. He chose to call Arnis modern, which says, okay, you have all of these traditional things that you do, and I like the idea. But I'm going to adapt it so it's more suitable for modern times. You know, I thought that was great. Right. I just tried to take it a little further. Okay. Okay? All of the basic principles of Arnis you're going to use. Might come up with new and better, innovative practice methods to improve your skill. Right. But the main thing are the principles of modern Arnis as Professor taught them. I can implement them 10 ways to Sunday. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it's about. Forget about the technique. Don't worry about technique. Technique is endless. Mm-hmm. Principles, you can implement principles countless ways depending on the situation, and that's what it's about. And of course, in order to do that, there's certain requirements. You got to be versatile, which includes movement, balance, flexibility. You know, you can't do a screamer well, or I don't think any martial art really well, unless you are physically, you know, fit. Right. You're limited by your level of physical fitness, really.
Now, is a screamer a hard style or soft style? Like you hear a lot of
it's
about
not
that?
Hard style.
No hard style.
Well, now let me take that back.
Okay.
Maybe it depends on who's doing it and if it's authentic. Because today, since everybody's jumped on the bandwagon, you know, it's like you go to most karate schools, they have a baston on their walls. And I've asked them myself, well, what would we do a screamer? I'm like, well, why? Well, it's like karate, but you just take the stick and do the same thing.
What's a baston?
So a baston is the cane.
Okay.
So. And
what's a cane? Oh, the stick. Okay.
The rattan.
Okay, the stick. Okay.
The rattan.
Okay. Well, some people might not know what a stick is.
So some people, I say they do karate with a stick. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So the stick. What is the stick about? The stick is to do what?
A scream Macaulay Arnis are really blade-based starts.
Okay.
We practice with sticks and other items, and basically sticks for practice, just because it's a lot more convenient and safe.
Now, what kind of stick is that?
But you can use it and think of it the same way as you would if it was a blade.
Now, is that bamboo?
This is rattan.
Rattan.
It's like it's similar to bamboo. It looks like it. It's not hollow.
Okay.
It's a grass. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is my short 24-inch stick. This is ironwood.
Right.
Kamagon. It feels like a little iron pipe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you practice with different.
This is stuff that you can practice with, even if you did full contact sparring matches. It's amazing the give that this has in it. It gives. Whereas this is like getting hit with an iron pipe. It's not going to give too much. You really don't want to get hit with this.
Now, some people, I've heard it said about Arnis or Scream Macaulay, you don't walk around with sticks. How does somebody, use that really? It's not enough movement, maybe, or they don't use enough kicks or something like that, or they're limited. What do you think about those comments?
Well, I cover this a lot of times in my seminars. Think of it this way. Empty hand, if you think of, and I like to go back to our beginnings, and we know if you look at our history and studies, we were hunter-gatherers at first, and
right.
Before we developed weapons, we were never as strong as regular animals that would be prey on us.
Right.
So we had to come up with some way to deal with them, and mainly we did it because we were smarter. But we were smart enough also to realize that we could develop tools as weapons to get some leverage. So the first ones were sticks and stones. Okay, you had a stick, you realized that you could hit something, or you could throw and hit something. But then, as you became more civilized, and learned ways of subsistence where you didn't have to run around all over the place, you started to feud more.
Right.
And fight more. And
more conflict.
More conflict. And
right.
You would fight with empty hand. And then you start to realize, well, hey, I know how to take that stick and hit somebody. Well, if I was going to hit somebody with the hand, I'd do it the same way. As a matter of fact, if you look at martial arts, it's amazing, isn't it? Look at the names for a lot of the techniques. I like especially karate. Sudo, right? Hammer fist.
Right.
Think about it. Why are they naming them after weapons? Because we mimic the movement of the weapon. That's what we're doing with them. We're mimicking the movement of the weapon. Right. Now, the benefit of the empty hand of the weapon, you got an extra joint there. So it takes more space to maneuver it. It's not as fast because of the space. It's longer. And you got to take that space in consideration so you don't have that conflict with the rest of your body. Same idea. Doesn't matter if I'm using my hands. It's just that now I have a shorter, I don't have the extra joint on there. It's shorter. I need less space to move it, and I'm quicker.
You think you're quicker?
With the empty hand, yeah.
Wow. Why would you say that?
Because I don't have what?
Okay. Right. You're not swinging the stick. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can move a shorter object a lot quicker than I can if I got a lot more length on it. So if I'm moving this around like this, and it's a knife,
Mm-hmm.
you might not be able to hardly see the knife from moving it, right?
Right. So it's a blade art, but
It's a blade art. We practice with sticks and lure to breeze, but it's also stick. You know, you can use this stick fighting. You can use any kind of weapon. Once you understand the principles of movement and how to use them, you can use anything. It doesn't have to be a stick. It doesn't have to be a blade. It could be a Coke bottle. It could be a belt. It can be almost anything.
So through this one training method, you're able to acquire movement skills to handle almost anything, or empty hand.
Yeah. Plus, this art is totally encompassing. I tell people that all the time. You know, once you get to a certain level, if you study other arts, you realize, you know, why have I studied this? It's all the same stuff.
Right.
People say, well, you
Well,
still...
yeah, what do you mean when you say it's all the same, though? I mean,
Well,
I might say
there are only
right,
so
but
many things that your body does.
Okay.
Okay?
Right. Okay.
That's
Right.
the first thing you realize. You might lack or add certain elements. Like, for instance, one thing that's sometimes missing in martial art is very essential is rhythm.
Okay.
Rhythm is so important.
Right.
You know? Movement, evasion,
Right.
have to be evasive, slippery. And the other thing that people don't seem to get, especially with this, principle from Tai Chi, or Chinese martial art.
Mm-hmm.
If you get into Tai Chi, you start to realize the reason your arms move is this whole concept of using the mind, intent, and the breath, and the chi.
Okay.
When you're moving your arms, they move because your body moves, and because of the breath and the mind intent to project your energy through whatever the mechanism is.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing is true with a stick. If you got a stick, it's your body that drives the stick. It's not just out there using the arm. Your body, the stick is moving because you learn to move your body, and the stick will just follow it.
Right.
Once you learn, it becomes like magic once you learn to move your body. You see how no matter what you do, everything it's that body that's moving it. Well, think about it this way, it's all physics. If I have some greater body of mass with some appendages attached to it,
Right.
that bigger body of mass and its movement is going to be able to what? Control those appendages.
Right.
Well, guess what? An arm is an appendage. A leg is an appendage. The trunk and the center, as we use in Tai Chi, is the center of mass.
1 minute.
No, I was saying the body or the center is center of mass, and by moving that in certain ways, you can influence how the arms move.
Right.
Or the limbs.
Right.
Which is all Tai Chi kinds of ideas. But, you know, it's taught in every art, really.
Okay.
You know, you might take different approaches to get there. Ultimately, you're looking to arrive at achieve the same goal, or arrive at the same point. Different path, many different ways to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me do that. We'll have to come back and continue this talk. We're going to take a break now. So